Welcome to another day of reading of the book Surcharged with Divine Love, written by Sukmani Aunty and published by Unistar Books Private Limited. Chapter 32, The Divine Intervention. During the time when my father was fighting for his life in a top and very expensive hospital in Ludhiana, money was flowing like water. Since the stay had to be much longer than expected, and because I wasn't in my own city, I decided to come back to Chandigarh and top up the account I was using to pay the bills. After having gone through my father's papers, I noticed a 12 lakh fixed deposit that was maturing within a week with the same account I was using. It only made sense to cancel the auto renewal option on it and get it credited to the account. My father's condition was critical, therefore I decided I didn't want to stay away from him too long, and this seemed a better option than going to other banks and getting money transferred and FDs broken. I approached the manager of the bank and told him my problem and asked him what documents were required from my side. I was the second name on the joint account and the nominee on the fixed deposit, thus didn't think there would be much of a problem. The staff, including the manager, seemed extremely suspicious of me and offered no help. They were in fact so rude that I would end up in tears and beg them to tell me a way to get the FT money. No amount of begging and pleading helped. They would call me every day and make me fill forms, sit for hours, pass snide remarks, and without any solution they would send me back. I requested the manager to send an employee from their Ludhiana branch to physically go check from the hospital if I'm telling the truth or not. I furnished no objection letters from all the next of kin, a letter from the head of the cancer department of the hospital certifying the condition of the patient. Finally, I even gave them a letter from the owner of the hospital, and yet the staff refused to help me. Indemnity bonds were signed, and after taking all these documents from me, they point blank told me to wait for the patient to die and then approach them with a court order. This just broke my heart. I came back home that day and cried in front of Guruji's photograph. I had already wasted a week in furnishing all these documents, going back and forth, and finally decided to give up and get an FT broken from another bank. I wanted to rush back to Ludhiana as news about my father's condition wasn't very promising. I was staying alone in Chandigarh while my mother and sister were with my father in Ludhiana. At about 8 a.m., I went out to open the main door to my house, which comes after a huge balcony for the maid. Just as I turned around to go in, I saw a hawk sitting on the edge of the roof. I stopped to look at it, and suddenly it took flight and came towards me, tipped right over my head, and fled away. In Sikhism, we all know the hawk to be a pet of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and I took it as a positive sign that maybe my work will get done at the other bank without much delay. As I walked in, I had a message rotating in my head over and over again, asking me to call up the law officer of the concerned bank's head office in Mumbai. I Google searched for the law officer and found a landline number. Instinctively, I picked up my phone and dialed the number. While dialing, I looked at the watch and it was barely 8:30 a.m. In my mind, I'm telling myself no one will be sitting in the bank at this hour, but yet my hands just went on to press the call button. On the second ring, the phone was picked up by the very person I was wanting to speak with. I told him what all I had gone through and how the bank employees have been misbehaving with me. I asked him to tell me if there was anything else they require from me, as I had submitted every single document I could think of. Ma'am, they are just harassing you. We don't require all these many documents from you, especially if you are a nominee in the FD and the second account holder. I told him I thought as much, and now how could he help me? He took my details and said he would call me back in 10 minutes. True to his word, he called back and told me to go to the branch and my work will be done. That morning, the behavior of the staff was markedly different. The manager came out to greet me and made me sit in his office. Within 10 minutes, my fixed deposit amount was credited to the savings account. I was offered tea and dry fruits by the manager, whereas earlier I was made to wait outside and subjected to all sorts of snide remarks, making me feel I was some kind of a criminal wanting to take away my father's money while he was unconscious. I was so hurt by their behavior and all the harassment, especially the fact that they kept me away from being next to my father for so long. I'm usually a very calm person, but out of the hurt and frustration, I said to the manager, I need to rush back to my father right now, but I will be back and I will sort you all out. I don't know why I said it, and of course, I had no intention to do much other than close down the account. After 2 months, as my father was out of the hospital and back in Chandigarh, I decided to visit the bank with the intention to close my account with them. As I entered, I noticed a lot of new faces. I entered the manager's office and noticed the manager had changed too. I decided not to talk about the past experience and just asked him to help me close down the account. He saw my name and immediately exclaimed, Oh, ma'am, you're Sukhmani. I've heard about what happened with you. I was a bit curious about how he knew, and he replied, Ma'am, the law officer in Mumbai had lashed out on the entire staff of this branch. He has taken this incident personally and has transferred out the entire old staff. Look outside. You won't see any old staff member. That's exactly what I had noticed while walking in. He further added, I have orders to furnish a written apology from the branch as well as the bank side. I had your father's email, therefore you have probably not read it. He took out a printout of the apology letter and gave it to me. Ma'am, how do you know the law officer in Mumbai? He's literally lit a fire under our chairs and we have instructions to serve you with the utmost of respect. Not wanting to tell him I had just googled his number, I instead told him that I knew him through a common friend. He then requested me to call him up again and reassure him that all was okay and that I was being treated well. Ma'am, until you call him back and tell him you're satisfied with our services, he will not spare us. He is a very senior person and is extremely upset over the way you were treated. I came home and decided to call him and thank him for all his help. I searched and I searched, but I couldn't find his number listed anywhere. Till date, I have not been able to find his number anywhere on Google. So, how did I know there are law officers in a bank? How did I get his number on the first search on Google that day? Why can't I find his number now? Why was such a senior officer sitting in office at 8:30 a.m. and why did he go to such lengths as to get the entire staff transferred out? Just as I sat pondering on these questions, I was reminded of my last words to the previous bank manager about coming back and sorting them all out. I didn't have to do anything. My guru had sorted them all out for me. Chapter 33. From Darkness into the Light. All his life, my father never believed much in God nor in Guruji, but Guruji always addressed my father as Masarji, which means your aunt's husband. My father met Guruji about 7 or 8 times, but each time he just couldn't connect with him. Guruji, on the other hand, never stopped asking about him and never stopped looking after him. Before meeting Guruji, my father's birth chart was read by the Sant Maharajji we were following at the time. It was clearly mentioned there that after the death of my father's eldest brother, my father's lower body will get affected and he would be bedridden. My father was the youngest of 4 siblings, 2 brothers, and 1 sister. All 3 of them, except Dad, had heart issues. Ever since I had heard of it, I was very worried for my dad, as my eldest uncle seemed to have the worst heart health out of the 3. He had a bypass surgery, and finally we got the news that he would need a heart transplant. By this time, we had come in contact with Guruji, and even though I never mentioned anything to Guruji, he knew. Being a veteran of the US Army, his name was added to the heart transplant recipients list. but at the fourth slot. I had a telepathy where I see my uncle bow down before Guruji and Guruji showers lots of blessings on him. I understood that Guruji had blessed him, but I was surprised to see how. Within a week, his name got pushed up one by one on the list and he was suddenly placed at the number one spot. That very day, there was an accident of a 17-year-old boy who had pledged his heart to be donated. Look at the odds here. The boy who died had wanted to donate his heart. All parameters matched, and the heart was given to my uncle. The operation was a success. The doctors had given him a maximum of 10 years, but it's been over 20 years till the time in writing this, and he's still going strong. Bless him. So, by blessing my uncle with a long life, Guruji blessed my father with a healthy life. My father was 6 feet tall and a bodybuilder, and for him to be bedridden would have probably killed him much before his time. Once, while in office in Delhi, Dad suddenly fell sick and was rushed to the hospital. Later, we came to know that his ulcer had burst and it was a dangerous situation. We were in Seva at Chandigarh and Guruji suddenly called us into his room and said, तेरे पापा दी तबीयत खराब है छेती छेती देखी एक उपाय करके आओ. Your father is unwell. Quickly go and do this remedy. We were told to do a few things for his health, and by the time we got the news from Delhi, we had already done the remedy given by Guruji. When my father got discharged from hospital, I tried telling him that Guruji had saved his life, but my father refused to believe it. When Guruji left for Delhi at the end of 1997, he would often go for a walk in a particular park in Vasant Kunj, Delhi. It was no coincidence that the park was right in front of the flat my father was staying in. My father would often call us and tell us, "Your Guru comes for a walk in the park opposite my house, and I stand in my balcony while he walks and he keeps looking at me." Obviously, Guruji was looking after him, even though he remained a non believer. Numerous times Guruji would tell me, "Your father will become a bigger devotee than all of you," and I would wait year after year for him to become one so that I too could visit Guruji as a family. In 2007, when Guruji left his physical body, all my hopes of seeing my dad become a follower died. Even though I knew a Guru's word is etched in stone, I felt Guruji had probably made vachans for another lifetime. Just before my father was to fall ill, I had Mataji's, Guruji's mother, darshans, and she tells me, "तेरे father को लाने के लिए 4 बंदों की तैयारी हो रही है." Meaning, 4 people are being prepared to bring your father. I got up and interpreted it as maybe it means to bring him into the fold of Guruji's Sangat. I never could imagine anything would happen to him as he was extremely strong and fit. Apparently, she had come to warn me. It's on the shoulders of 4 men that a body is carried. I never understood it then. In 2014, just a few days before my father got diagnosed with cancer, Guruji comes to me in telepathy and I see him to be about 6 inches tall. He jumps into a marble mandir and tells me, "Marble da mandir laya," and the feeling is that he's telling me that he will get sthapit in that mandir. After saying this, he sits in the small mandir and goes into meditation. The next day, I go looking for marble mandirs, but I'm unable to find the size I saw in my telepathy. In the evening, someone told me of a place where I may be able to find something matching the description I had given. With Guruji's grace, I found a mandir that matched the one I saw in my telepathy. The jali design too was same as what I saw in my telepathy, and so I just bought it. I washed it with milk and found a place to put it. I placed Guruji's picture inside, and for some strange reason one just couldn't move away from the mandir. It has such an attraction that for hours Mom and I would sit there just staring at Guruji's picture. We felt his strong presence in the marble mandir. Within a day or so of bringing home the marble mandir, my father got diagnosed with prostate cancer stage 4 and a neuroendocrine tumor in his bladder. The doctors told us that this is the most painful cancer to get and that he will be in pain 24/7. It was advised that we should contact the PGI hospital, Chandigarh, for pain management as the disease progresses. After 2 surgeries and oral chemo medicines, my father seems to be coping well. Each time something bothered me, I would run to the Marble Mandir and I would seem to get answers or feel calm and strong enough to face whatever was happening. I felt that, true to his word, Guruji was Thapit in that mandir and he gave us all the strength to go through the hard times. For a brief period, my father consulted an oncologist in the city where my sister was living. He would go there for his checkups and stay a few extra days to enjoy some time with his grandchildren. Mom and I would sometimes accompany him, and sometimes he would go alone. On one such trip, while he was with my sister, and Mom and myself were in Chandigarh, he made a frantic call to us at around 2 a.m. I remember it was December of 2016, and what he said left me and Mom in shock and panic. He said that he's trying to call my sister, but she's not picking up her phone. My sister has a big house, and her room was on the first floor, while Dad preferred to stay in the guest bedroom on the ground floor. He said, "Tell her no one should come down and that they should stay in their rooms because he's here." On hearing this, I went into uncontrollable shivers and started crying. "Dad, who is there? What are you saying? Did you have a bad dream? Is there someone in the house?" "No, he's roaming around in the colony. I can see him. He has come to take me." I froze in fear on hearing this and asked again, "Who can see you? Please tell us what is happening." "He's a black shadow, and I'm not afraid of him. I'm ready to go. In fact, I'm signaling him to come to me by turning the bedside light on and off." With this, he put the phone down, and for almost half an hour, I couldn't get in touch with either my sister or my dad. Mom and I didn't know what to do or who to contact. We finally got through to my sister after some time and told her to rush down and see what's happening downstairs. After a few minutes, she called back, scared and badly shaken. She said neither she nor my brother in law could move. "I feel my feet are glued to the floor. I can't move." She told us that the entire house is in darkness. There seems to be no electricity, and what's stranger is that even if there is no electricity, there is always some light in the house. But that day, she said, the darkness has never felt so black and haunting. We realized later that as long as that presence stayed with my dad, no one could move, and as soon as it left, the lights came back on again, and my sister was able to rush down. On reaching my dad's room, my sister found him sitting up in bed and looking at the window. On asking him what exactly did he see, this is what he narrated. "I saw a black shadow. Somehow I could see beyond walls and see him roaming in the colony. Suddenly the lights went off and I tried to sit up but felt the floor disappear and replaced with darkness." He further went on to describe the shadow. "He had a very strong and authoritative voice. He first laughed at me and I told him, 'I'm not scared of you. You have come to take me. I'm ready to go.' The shadow replied and said, 'You're forgetting something.' 'How does it matter what I'm forgetting? I can't take anything with me in any case.' The shadow laughed again and said, 'Try and remember, it's not your time right now.' With this, Dad said it turned into smoke, and before it went out of the window, he mentioned a certain number of days. I calculated the days and it came to 3 months. We realized that from March 2017 onwards, Dad's condition kept going down. Once again, Dad's condition started to deteriorate. Around April, he became a bit disoriented, and on consulting the doctors, it was decided to get him admitted in the hospital. Within 2 days of hospitalization, my dad suddenly slipped into a coma. He stayed in coma for 28 days. Within those days, at least 3 to 4 times, the doctors gave up on him. They would tell us to meet him for the last time as he wouldn't make it through the night, and next morning, by some miracle, his parameters would stabilize. On coming out of coma, the first thing he said was, "Those who don't believe in God are the biggest idiots." I told Mom to pinch me as I couldn't believe it was my dad talking. "Dad, what makes you say that?" Did you see God? Yes, he was around my bed at all times. He described God as light in a human form. What did he say to you? And this is what he narrated to me that day. God has a very authoritative voice. He has been with me all these days. Whenever I felt unbearable pain, He would switch me off and take me to a place that felt so warm and nice. I felt no pain there. It felt like floating on a cloud of wool. After sufficient rest, He would bring me back into my body again, and that's when I would feel the pain. He did this to me about 8 to 9 times. I was completely aware of my surroundings and could even see you all sitting in the lobby downstairs. One day I asked God to open the window beside my bed and let me jump out and end all this misery. On hearing this, He said, "No, don't ever interfere in my plans." I asked Dad if he actually saw us every day, and he said, "Yes, I used to see you every day. Not only that, God made me see everything a day in advance. I would know exactly what would happen the next day." This knowing of events a day in advance continued for quite some time. He would tell us things and they would happen the next day, exactly as he had mentioned. He even told us when he would be discharged from hospital. At one time, my father saw himself locked up in a barrel. "I have been locked up in a barrel and am being punished for my sins I have committed. There is a presence outside that controls the barrel." On hearing this, I understood my father is going to end up in a very dark situation. We prayed to Guruji to forgive him for whatever he may have done in his past lives and the present one. Within a few days, he spoke of being shifted out of a barrel and shown a small room just big enough for a bed. One morning, my father complained of chest pain and difficulty in breathing. We rushed him to a heart institute where he was kept in the ICU for observation. Various tests were run on him, the results of which were to come the next day. Next morning, when I entered the ICU to see him, he seemed agitated. One of the many problems my dad faced in any hospital were the beds. He was a 6-footer, well built man, and the hospital beds were a tad bit too small for him. I presumed he had an uncomfortable night due to the bed and was thus in a bad mood, but the reason turned out to be something even I could never fathom. He complained about the tasteless food and the uncomfortable bed for a while, and then suddenly he asked me, "Your guru is no longer alive, is he?" "No, Dad. He left his body in 2007. Why do you ask?" He gave me a disgusted look and said, "Because I saw him last night." I presumed my father had dreamt of him and made the mistake of saying so out loud. This infuriated him further, and he went on about the horrible conditions of the ICU. "How can anyone sleep in such a place? I haven't slept a wink all night, and you're talking of dreaming?" "Okay, so how did you see him?" "I saw him in flesh and blood, just the way I can see you now. He was wearing a red dress and he smiled at me and said, 'Uncle, you're in the wrong hospital. Change your hospital right now.'" While my dad was narrating his experience, I felt a change in him. I saw something in his eyes, and all his temper and the bad mood vanished. I could see the hard exterior crack and the light finally piercing through. He asked me what Guruji meant by changing hospitals, so I told him to wait for his test reports and that we'll have better clarity then. At around 12 noon, the doctor called me into the ICU again, and I was shocked to hear them repeat the exact same words at Guruji's. "Ma'am, you're in the wrong hospital. The tests show that it's not his heart, it's his kidneys that are failing, and you need to rush him to a hospital that has a proper nephrology department." We were told that the breathing issue was a secondary problem, the main being the kidneys, and that he needed dialysis as fast as possible. We made arrangements for his shift to another hospital and his treatment started. The doctors were able to save one of his kidneys. Of course, we knew it was a temporary solution. 2017 was a very difficult year for my father as he kept going in and out of hospital. He continued to speak of scary visions, pain, and suffering. He would tell me about exactly where he would be born and to whom, how his life would be, and how he would die. I had heard Guruji say that sometimes he can cut lifetimes in just a vision or a dream, and prayed that that's what was happening to him as well. In my heart, I had this feeling that he's not going to a better place, judging by all the darkness he used to speak about. My grandfather's last journey was all about seeing Guruji and seeing the light, and here my father spoke of nothing but darkness and pain. This worried me, and I continued to pray to Guruji to forgive him and guide him to the light. Dad didn't want to continue with the treatment any further as he felt they were just prolonging his misery and pain, so he instructed us to take him back home. It was a tough decision for us to take, and after consulting all doctors, we brought him home. Without treatment, the doctors had told us that he would barely make it beyond a week to maximum 10 days. We were told he may slip into coma before passing away. My dad lived for 3 months and kept talking to us till his very last breath. In these 3 months, he had made us put up Guruji's photograph in front of his bed, and we could see he was mentally connecting and conversing with him at all times. I noticed he was praying more and never spoke about seeing the darkness again. His visions were more positive, and he started seeing his father who he had lost at the age of 14. He even spoke about his caretaker, who he was very close to in this life, and how he would again be there to look after him in his next life. He would talk about happy things. He would sometimes even joke and never complained of any pain. Now, my biggest fear was to face the day and the exact moment my father would slip away. I did not have the strength to see him go. I would often pray to Guruji to create some situation where I'm not home to see it happen. Dad continued to talk and remained conscious right up to the end. On the morning of 26 January 2018, Dad asked me to call my sister from Ludhiana. In fact, he insisted. All day he felt restless and complained of the bright light bothering his eyes. I closed all the lights in the room, and he yet complained that the light is too bright and that I should change the direction or do something with it. It was a cloudy and rainy day, so I pulled back the curtains and showed him. Dad, see, it's raining and it's so dark outside. What light are you seeing? It's coming from the front. He pointed towards the door. It's too bright, it's white light. Mom and I understood what light he was talking about, as my grandfather often spoke about it too. Till lunchtime, he seemed restless, and Mom told me to arrange for some oxygen just in case he would need it. I called up my supplier, and as luck would have it, he was on his way to Delhi and asked me to collect it personally from his home. I understood that this was my excuse to step out of the house, and I knew no oxygen would be required, and that I will get the news once I'm out. And this is exactly what happened. As soon as my sister reached, I hugged my dad and stepped out of the house with an incredibly heavy heart, knowing I would never see him again. Sure enough, midway I got the news and had to come back. In my absence, Mom heard Guruji's voice saying, "इसको जो मंदिर में अमृत पड़ा है वो पिला दे," meaning, make him drink the amrit, sacred water, lying in the marble mandir. Mom got a little in a glass for him to drink, and my sister lifted his head up. He asked, "Ye kya hai? What is it?" Mom replied it was amrit. "Who has sent it?" Mom said that Guruji had sent it for him and that he should drink it and go with the light. He drank it and just closed his eyes forever. Me and my family are witness to his transition from the darkness into the light, and how the experiences slowly shifted from scary to peaceful ones and finally into the light. I knew Guruji had taken him to a better place, but I still wanted a confirmation. 2 months from my father's passing, Guruji came to my sister and asked her about my dad. "क्यों फिर लिटलू? Papa चले गए?" My sister replied in the affirmative, and he said, "देख ले, मानता नहीं था मुझे, पर मैंने एंड में संभाल लिया. So your father has gone. See, he didn't believe in me, but I have taken care of him in the end." This was enough to settle my thoughts. I started seeing my father in my dreams almost every night. I had a tough time dealing with his death, and I knew he was worried for me too, because I wasn't settled. He started telling me about certain things in my dreams that were actually taking place in my life. For example, I had been gifted 4 cotton saris by a friend, and one of them, pink in color, was my favorite. That night, my father again came in my dreams and mentioned that he too likes the pink sari and finds it to be the best. I felt maybe he was unable to cross over because of me, and so I started praying to Guruji to help him. The next day, I see my father, younger and very well dressed, escorted by two light beings on either side of him. I try calling out to him, but he doesn't seem to recognize me. They escort him into a kind of a lift that's made of light. As he enters, it shoots up at super fast speed and disappears. Ever since that day, I have not seen him again in my dreams, and I understood that he is finally free of his worries regarding me and has progressed on his journey with Guruji's blessings and grace. ਜਦੋਂ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਮਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਉਸਦੇ ਪਾਸ ਕੋਈ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੰਭਾਲਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਕਸ਼ਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਜਿਵੇਂ 100 ਬਿੱਛੂ ਕੱਟਦੇ ਹਨ. When a human being dies and if he doesn't have a guru to look after him, the pain of crossing over can be as painful as being bitten by 100 scorpions all at once. Chapter 34. Holding on to my father's shoes. After my father's demise, I gave away all his clothes and shoes to needy people, donated some stuff to old age homes and hospitals, but I held on to 2 pairs of his shoes. Since they were very expensive, I had thought of giving them to someone who I thought would value them. It was rather stupid of me, but I still held on to them. One day, as I came down my flat and was walking towards my car, 2 sadhus in saffron robes came toward me asking for some donations. As a rule, I don't like giving money, so I ignored them and kept walking towards my car. Suddenly, one of them said to me, अपने बाप दे 2 जोड़े जूते रखी बैठी हैं, वही दे दे. You're holding on to 2 pairs of shoes belonging to your father. Give us those at least. When I heard this, I stopped and looked at them in shock, wondering how they knew. I told them to wait and rushed back up to get the shoes. As soon as they took the shoes, I turned towards my car to open it, and within that much time they had disappeared. I understood immediately that I was holding on to his things or memories, and maybe that wasn't what Guruji wanted. Guruji's ways of making you do things are beautiful and amazing indeed. जय गुरुजी. आज की रीडिंग बस यहीं तक. कल फिर अगले चैप्टर से शुरू करेंगे. उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सबको बहुत अच्छा लगा. सुखमनी आंटी का भी फिर से शुक्राना अपनी इतने ब्यूटीफुल एक्सपीरियंसेस को हमारे साथ शेयर करने के लिए. जय गुरुजी.